Welcome to Talking About Tracy Chapman, the Tracy Chapman fan podcast. I am Stefan Evans, and this is our first episode of 2021. Today we have the incredible artist and photographer Tim Hailand, the artist who Tracy commissioned to produce the Telling Stories album artwork. We talk art, music, and keeping creative in the pandemic. Now, if you want to jump straight to the Tracy Chapman content, head to the 5-minute mark. But in the meantime, here's Tim. Good morning. Are you in LA, did you say?
I am, yes.
How's it going over there with the pandemic?
The pandemic is very popular here. COVID is extremely popular in Los Angeles. I think it's becoming more popular. Good news is we have a new president he's ordered a lot of vaccine. I think yesterday he ordered 200 million more doses. So there's a bit of a lag, there's a lot of centers set up where people get vaccinated, but they close them down for a few days because they've, run out of vaccine, but they're ramping it back up. But he's only been in office less than a month. So it's a big mess that he has to clear up.
Right.
But I'm confident, it's stay calm. And I mean, we're still staying home for a while. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm alive, I'm healthy, so I'll stay home for a bit longer.
Take your blessings. Yeah, I'm the same actually. We're just about coming into a point in the UK where all of the old and vulnerable people have been vaccinated, and the R rate is down. So I think things are starting to look a little optimistic. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's a nice feeling.
No, it's good. I mean, I think it'll be good. I'm extremely careful. I think far too many people have been too careless and traveled when they shouldn't. I mean, that's why these new strains are in different parts of the world. People just don't get it. I'm tired of hearing people I know who say, "Oh, I just needed to do it for my soul." It's like, no, stay home. So for me, it's like, had more people worn masks and not traveled, we'd have less of a pandemic. So I don't really want to hear it from people. And it's also, but that being said, I think we're making some progress, but then at the same time, people can't just be like, I'm vaccinated, I don't need to wear a mask, and I don't need to, have any precautions. I think that's one of the dangers too.
Yeah, for me, it's been a very, very obvious divide between people who have empathy and people who don't, and it's been
100%. Yeah. I completely agree. Where do you live, in London, or no? You're Scottish?
I'm in Manchester. I'm actually from Wales originally, so that's probably what you're picking up.
I spent a week in Wrexham with Gareth Thomas about 10 years ago, which led to nothing on a number of levels. But
that is insane. I'm from a very, very close part to Wrexham, where I'm from. It's a little town.
It's nice. I mean, the countryside is nice. It's quite charming, So it was nice. It was a nice place to visit.
Did you manage to keep creative over the pandemic? Have you been working through it, or has it affected your work?
I'm always creative. I mean, the pandemic, as an artist, I isolate and work on my own. That's what artists do. So it on a day-to-day basis, it hasn't changed my practice much.
Yeah.
But what I also do as part of my practice, I travel and I see people and I see performances and I photograph those things. So I haven't done that. And travel is a part of my artistic practice, and it's where I collect images for my work. But I've worked on a bunch of things, but some days I'm like, oh, it's great, and I'm doing this, and other days I could care less, so and then I think that my days are sometimes like in London, the people say that you have 4 seasons in one day. So some days I have 4 seasons in one day. I'm like, yay, good morning, I'm working, and then I'm like, oh, I want to take a nap, and then it's like, oh, this movie is great, and then it's like, oh fuck, I can't stand this pandemic. So it runs its course, but I'm in a productive mode now, and I'm always doing something. I mean, I've worked on my space a lot, so my space looks even better, and I watch a ton of films. So I've watched many films, so which is also part of my practice. So I mean, I miss the world. I miss intimacy with the world, like being able to touch the world, really. Because when you go out, you're not relaxed and intimate with the world. So I miss that.
Yeah.
But I believe that we'll get there someday.
Yeah, it's coming back. It might take a little while longer, but we've just got to keep that faith, haven't we? I mean, I really struggled early on in pandemic one or sort of lockdown one, but I found ways to be creative, like you say, in my own way, and
Uh-huh.
it does keep you going. So today, I guess we wanted to talk a little about the Telling Stories album. For those who don't know, it's the fifth studio album that Tracy released. It's follow-up to the hugely successful New Beginning. It sold 1.7 million copies worldwide. And today we have Tim Hailand, the photographer who shot the album cover and the booklet inlay from that very album. So could you tell us a little bit about that work?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it kind of came about. I was living in New York at the time. I was working with words. I had a box of letters that I found, and I started playing around with them. And I would place words in context, generally nature, in a context where you wouldn't normally find a word. You don't normally find letters in nature. So I started this body of work with that were I would call my word pieces, where I would place letters in a context and photograph it. And Tracy and I had a mutual friend who brought her to the gallery where I was having a show, and she bought a piece of mine. And then over time, it was actually interesting. It's kind of before everyone had a mobile phone. I think what year did that album come out? 2000?
Yeah, I think it was late 1999 slash 2000.
So around 98, I remember I was living in New York, but I would go to Germany a lot and visit my friends who were like friends, collectors of my work. We went to Berlin together. I remember it was my very first night in Berlin. I didn't have my own mobile phone because most people didn't. So my friend Peter gave me his phone. I was on the U-Bahn in Berlin, and my phone rang, which at that time was kind of unusual because we weren't all, we weren't all glued to a phone. And it was my friend calling me from San Francisco. It was the 4th of July, asked me if I would do the album cover for Tracy. And I was like, oh, this is great. It's like the 4th of July, which is a holiday here in America. I'm in Berlin. Berlin is great.
Yeah. I love Berlin.
Sure, I'll do it. So I like the way in which I received the message to do it. Then basically Tracy was in Los Angeles recording the album. So I came to LA. I came into the studio she was playing me some tracks from the album. And I think Telling Stories was the first song she played. And the thing about Tracy that's amazing, you forget that voice is so incredible. It's such a great, great voice that she has. So you hear this beautiful voice, a great storyteller, beautiful voice. So we listened to the album, and I told her ideas that I had. I said, I see a lot of sky. There's a line about a spaceship.
There's fiction in the space between you and me, a fabrication, a grand scheme where I am the scary monster. I eat the city as I leave the scene, and in my spaceship, I am laughing.
Yeah. So in my mind, I was thinking like UFO or spaceship. So I just said, I see a lot of sky. Like I see a lot of sky. And Tracy's like, great, I do too. And I felt it was nighttime. So I would go out and I would shoot pictures. Like with this, the process for making this, I would simply take these cardboard letters, put them on plexiglass. Like I always work in a very analog way. Even when I'm working with digital things, I approach in an analog way or in a kind of a tactile way. So I placed letters on plexiglass. I had someone drive me around and assist me, and I would shoot like sunsets and all of that stuff. And then each morning I would go meet Tracy at the chateau where she was staying, Chateau Marmont. It's a hotel here. And we would review the pictures and then, choose what we liked. One funny story, actually, Chateau Marmont is like a kind of a 1920s, very grand hotel in LA. Everyone stays there. Everyone goes there. And so Tracy was staying there, and she would go in the morning to, and I don't think she would mind me telling this story. She would go in the morning to the gym to use the Stairmaster. And it's a very, very small gym. And the only other person there was Bjork. And Tracy said that when she would go in the morning, Bjork would be there before her and have loud techno music on.
Wow.
And she said that her goal was to get there the next day before Bjork got there so she could choose the music. And I was teasing her because I was like, both Tracy and Bjork, they're very iconic in their appearance. Like, you say their name and you can picture them.
Yeah.
And I was teasing her because they're on the same label, or they were on the same label. And I said, "Oh, your label mate," like in the horrible way, like if someone says, "Oh, you take photos." My friend's a photographer. It's like that everyone thinks that, they're connected. So, but anyways, the next day when I went, I said, "Did you get there early enough?" And she's like, "No, she was already there." But I just love this image in my mind. Tracy and Bjork in a small, on two Stairmasters next to each other. So anyway, sorry. I then ended up shooting it outside. There's a big shopping plaza on the corner of Sunset Boulevard and Crescent Heights. There's no real centers in Los Angeles. Everything is like a shopping plaza is a town center. So I shot the image from there at nighttime, and that's what we ended up using as the front cover.
Yeah, for me, it's become synonymous with the album. You know how you can get a sort of feeling, a photosynthesia maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like you really nailed the brief there, because when I listen to the song, I imagine what's going on in that album artwork, and I don't necessarily see it as LA, but it is just it's very atmospheric. You're right.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be particularly Los Angeles. I think it's a particular place. It's a place, a space, an energetic space, maybe. So I like the fact that you feel that it relates to the essence or the content of the record, and it's more about an emotional space than a literal space, I would say.
How close to the original purchase that Tracy made is the final Telling Stories artwork?
It's the same body of work.
Yeah.
I would say it's darker, maybe, in a way. But then there's also images inside of the I haven't looked at it in a long time. And then Herb Ritz made the back cover, which I was happy to be paired with Herb Ritz. Was a good pairing.
They really complement each other in a way. It's kind of almost like the dark against the light photo of his, and it's very well balanced. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Obviously, now we're living in a digital sort of world, and a consideration for artwork is what is it going to look like on a tiny handheld device, which is how most people will see it. Did you approach the photographs with a consideration for the 5-inch sort of square CD artwork at all, or were you just in a creative?
Yeah, I don't think I thought about the format. I thought more about the concept. I think CD was the predominant thing, so maybe vinyl was sort of phasing out around then. But I guess in terms of your question, I didn't think about format. I mean, I knew it had to be square, which is sort of an unusual. I don't ever work square. I always work rectangular in images. So I think I had to think more about the square format.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Was that the first album art you ever shot?
Yes. I think it's the only, in high school, I drew album covers, like in art class in high school. The album, it's interesting because I'm born in 1965. And so I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And I grew up with my older brother. Like, I remember very specifically, there was Court and Spark, the Joni Mitchell album. There was a Kraftwerk album, not Autobahn, Trans-Europe Express. There was like an Elton John album. There were these very specific, the albums were quite iconic, the covers at the time. And it was also what my older brothers and sisters knew. It was sort of an unknown world.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was randomly watching this 2009 interview between Russell Brand and Morrissey last night. I just happened upon it in a YouTube, rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And Morrissey was talking about how back in the day, music wasn't everywhere. It wasn't in your car. It wasn't in the store. It wasn't everywhere. It's something you had to sort of seek out. So my whole way of coming about music, and even in the early 80s when I started going to concerts and listening to music, and mainly British bands, you had to go. There weren't a lot of people who knew about it, and this was even pre-MTV. So you had to kind of seek it out, and you had to seek out the physical thing, and then you had to spend money on it. So I think the way in which I always think the way in which one comes about information is important to how the information is assimilated. And I think if there's no physicality and there's no effort, and something is just everywhere, and then songs are just tracks, they're not even, people don't even call songs that, I like that track. And music is written by committee largely now. It's vastly different. So, sorry, what was the original question? I think I may have gone off on a tangent, but
it was a really interesting tangent. I'm very much here for it. The question was if it was the first album out you would.
It was the first album out, and I guess I mentioned all those things because album covers were extremely important. Like Pete Burns, the singer, was a very good friend of mine, and Pete said that like the Patti Smith album cover of Horses, that image alone was extremely important. It's like just that cover launched 1,000 ships, if you will. So I think I approached the work from the point of view that the album cover is very important.
Yeah, another Northern English legend there that you mentioned. We love Pete Burns.
Well, Pete was an amazing person. Like I think that some people have magic about them. That some people actually just have it, and Pete really had magic. But I just remember Pete saying, the Robert Mapplethorpe cover of Patti Smith in a white shirt with a black tie with the man's jacket over her shoulder. It's like that. It's extremely iconic, and it's as important. The whole thing comes together, and it's as important in the say the youthquake kind of the time, or of the power of the music and the importance of it. It's interesting. I read like the NME 50 greatest songs of 2020. Randomly, because I thought I'll see what the kids are up to. And then I made a playlist of it.
Yeah.
And I tried to get through it. So much of it is not interesting. So much of it is just quite generic. And it seems that people have less and less to say. They have more platforms on which to say it. I mean, that's social media in general. And there just seems to be less kind of content and point of view. So it's, to me, it's, all that stuff is important. And certainly someone like Tracy is all about content and craft.
I think that it's testament to, the fact that she has sought you out and remembered your work and remembered you, and come back to that when she had an opportunity to bring you in to tell the stories. And I think that's testament to both of you. I think that's a really lovely partnership.
Well, I think, Stefan, with anyone's work, you make something, and if it resonates with someone, then it does. If it doesn't resonate with someone, then it doesn't. So Tracy's work has always resonated with me. So of course I was happy that my work resonated with her. The work has to have some value to the listener, to the viewer, what have you.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. And what you say with people having lots of platforms but not very much to say, I was umming and ahhing about referencing a current trend. I work in marketing and media, so I have to keep track of these things. But there's a current trend on TikTok which says everything can be an album cover. And the idea is that you can take a photo of anything, it becomes an album cover. But I think what you've beautifully illustrated today is that actually that is far from the case. And and even with the portrait which you mentioned from Patti Smith captures an essence, which lightning in a bottle sort of moment, isn't it? You can't
Totally.
These things can't be replicated time and again. What did it feel like to see your work popping up left, right, and center? Obviously, by this time, you're already an established artist and you're very used to being in galleries. Maybe now it's in HMV and...
No, it's great. At the time, actually, where I shot it, there was HMV Records. Like in the shopping plaza, there's a gym. I mean, now there's a Starbucks, of course. There was HMV Records. This is when you had big record stores still. And they had maybe like 8-foot kind of vinyl reproductions of albums, kind of like wrapping around the building. I'm pretty sure it was made into one of those. It was made into T-shirts. It was great. I mean, I think I was in Greece one time, like in Athens, and I go into some weird little record shop and I see my picture, the image I made, Tracy's album cover. So it's great. You know, it has, when you do, it has a different form of distribution. So it's nice, you know, it's nice to see it kind of infiltrating or being part of the larger world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking us through all of that. I've got so much more of an appreciation for it now, and I can't wait.
Oh, good.
Are the prints available anywhere, or do you sell them at galleries still?
There's a few prints available from the edition. I think I made an edition of 7 of the album cover.
Oh, wow.
I think I have a few left. It's been so long. I think they're around 2 feet by 3 feet. But basically, you know, Tracy owns the rights to the images in connection with the record. And she allowed me to print, I believe 5 or 7 that I could sell as prints in the gallery. And so I think I have a couple left from the edition.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. But I don't own the negatives. I don't have the right to print anything more than that.
No, sure. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your morning, and it was an absolute pleasure.
I look forward to hearing a podcast when it's out. Tracy, favorite singer?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know
your favorite male singer?
Male?
Yeah,
that's really tough. You know, I think Rufus Wainwright was up there. I think Placebo from a sort of band perspective. I know he's not just one person, but I really like the contralto vocal. So like the deep female vocal.
Rufus, I know really well. I've known Rufus for over 20 years. I made a book with Rufus like 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. I honestly did not know that.
I made a series of books, One Day in the Life of, long story short. I spent one day with one person, an entire day, and then made it into a book. So I made one with Daniel Radcliffe when he was doing Equus on Broadway. I made one with Rufus. We actually shot it twice. I did it in Edinburgh with him, and it was right after his mom had passed, and he didn't like how he looked, so we shot it again in New York. I did one with Jake Shears.
Oh, I love Jake.
And I did one with Robert Wilson and Marina Abramovich in Manchester.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I was doing my research before the call, and I clocked a few live shots. I love that.
I used to be a Smiths fan, so I used to go see the Smiths in the 80s, and I was friendly with Morrissey at the time. So he would give me, tickets and backstage passes, and I used to always bring him books. And so long story short, fast forward, he played at Hollywood High School like 5 years ago, and I went playing this really small venue, and I gave him these books I made, and he took them on stage, and he's looking at the cover. You see the Rufus cover, and he places it on the drum riser. And so for the rest of the concert film, it was released as like, Morrissey 25 or something. It actually was a great concert. He's also another one who gives either a great concert or a terrible concert, which I actually prefer. It was a great concert, and it was just funny to see my books. It became like a cast in a character in the cast of the thing, but it was the Rufus book. And Rufus asked me, did you set that up with him or what? Like I sent Rufus a video of it. He was confused, but Anyways, sorry to blah blah blah, but I like when things end up in places like that. It's sort of like, when you see a photo you made that's reproduced in a random record store in Greece.
Yeah. That's brilliant. It sounds like you've got so many stories, and
telling stories,
and I bet you can't wait to get back out there and make some more.
Yeah, exactly.
It was an absolute pleasure chatting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you very much again, and have a nice day. Bye.
Okay, cheers.